Jesus had gotten a pretty good reputation as he's been traveling around about being a healer. And so in the gospel today, we see him approaching this area of the Decapolis, the 10 cities, and it's as if they're just looking for somebody to shove in front of him to heal. It doesn't give the man a name. It doesn't say if he's related to anybody there. Usually in a healing story, they identify the person with a little more than they shoved a man in front of him. So it's as if the people are just like, show us, come on, show us. And they just find anybody they can who needs healing and puts him in front of Jesus and says, okay, do your thing. And Jesus dumbfounds them, I'm convinced, because he takes the man away from the crowd, away from all the prying eyes, away from all the activity, and has a one-on-one, very intimate encounter with the man. And he just invites him to be open to God's movement in his life. He prays that the man be open. I believe that's the prayer he has for all of us today. Are we willing to be open to God's activity in our life? Not looking for it in other people, not shoving other people in front of us and saying, oh, do something with them, heal them, forgive them, treat them better. What about us being open? What does God choose to do with us in our life, in our day, in my relationships with others? What does God seek to do with us? St. James, in writing in this letter of James, he reminds his listeners that God shows no partiality. While I think others might need to change their opinions, while I think others might need to change their behaviors, while I think others might need to be different, am I showing a partiality that does not allow God to touch me? How do I need to be open to the movement of God in my life, in this time, in this way? That's the challenge that I believe Christ is offering us in the readings. And it's an ancient reality. Isaiah, writing back in his time, is to those who are frightened, be strong. Recognize within us is the opportunity of God's grace. That in my life is the opportunity to care for another, to be a witness to another, to be a sign of hope to another. And even if it reacts badly, ends up unfortunately, am I open to God's movement in my life? How does that play itself out in our ordinary lives? In a willingness to testify to the truth, to speak to the good, to use what God has given us for the sake of his heavenly glory. Even if it's difficult, even if it's challenging. I had an incident this week where the principal called me up to have a conversation with one of our students, and I truly believe he was misunderstood. And when I sat him down, I think the most surprising thing was I said, tell me what happened. Not, I heard you did this, I think you did this, you should have known better. I'm good at that, right? But I said, tell me what happened. And that's the showing no partiality that St. James challenges his listeners with. Don't presume you have the full story. Don't presume that you know all that has already happened, but show no partiality, because God works in each of us in different ways. Am I open to witnessing to God's glory in that moment, at that time, with that individual. As Jesus shows us in the gospel, he takes the man away from the crowd so it can be an opportunity of grace in that moment. Jesus invites us to be those sorts of witnesses, to be willing to proclaim his message to each other by the witness of our lives. Not for the amusement of the crowd, not so that it can be put up on a YouTube video, not so that I can Instagram it to all of my friends, but how do I speak to one person the glory of God's promise of hope? How do I be open for the working of God in my life and in another's? As we celebrate this Eucharist, in which one person sacrificed himself that we might know the mercy of God, let us be open to that action in our life. How will we be a sign of God's mercy to others? How will I be open to the moment that God's glory might be proclaimed in life?